Networks don't talk about it. Government can't tax it. But sports betting is a $200 billion a year business.
That's a major U.S. Supreme Court ruling that could open the door for legalized sports betting all across the country.
The Supreme Court is giving the green light for states to determine on their own whether they want to legalize sports gambling.
Tell Donahue his next pick is good for 20 grand, but I need him to guarantee a win, okay? I need a lock.
He's not that fucking good.
No, Tommy, he has to. All right, he has to, or else they're going to kill me. Do you realize this, Tommy? They're going to fucking kill me. I can't afford to gamble anymore. I need a fucking lock.
And we're back. Another season of Lock Talk. Joey, Jake, it is season 2. Joey, good to be back. How are we doing over on the East Coast?
Excellent. Good to be back. Great to be back. Yeah, it's the intro. That was awesome. That was great. Yeah, it was great hearing that. It's been a while. I don't think it's been since my availability come last January, February was pretty thin. So, it's been a while since you and I have been on this.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So good to be back. Definitely excited to have chat getting into it as well. As we move forward here, we're going to be streaming weekly on X, YouTube, and Twitch. Days are going to rotate a little bit. Joey just got engaged, so big shout out, Joey. He'll be busy. Also, we both have jobs, so that also plays a part.
Yeah.
Forget about a few other things. Yeah, you do forget about that sometimes. We don't do this full time at all. Got some new guests, some co-hosts, more. Talked to Isaac today. He'll be back on again to talk props as we get towards the NFL season. Make sure you follow on TikTok at Lock Talk Pod, as we're going to be posting more clips and stuff on there as well as we move through the season. Also, you're going to see a lot of this going on this season as we partnered with Bet Openly. Not a sponsorship, not getting paid. They don't really do that anyways, and we don't really need it because the more we promote them, the more our bets get filled. Bet Openly, peer-to-peer betting, we've been talking about it for a long time. So if you've been listening to us at all, you already know everything you need to know about Bet Openly. We'll continue to talk about them as we continue to talk about wagers. Today's more informational than anything. And last thing I wanted to touch on, the Twitching Hour. It's something that I'm going to have coming on Sundays. Going to hop on Twitch during the end of the noon slate. Obviously, a play on the Witching Hour. Love to do it weekly. Going to be going to a lot of Packer games because we're good again, which is awesome. So, yeah, excited about season 2. I know Gino I've already talked to, possibly coming on to talk a little NFL before we start the season. Hopefully have a lot of the same guys from last year. Dan Koob, another one I'd love to see back on, drinking some bourbon with me and Joey. Joey, it's a college football podcast this time around. We're going to get into a lot. I sent Joey a Google Doc that is 10 pages long. I'm sure he read all of it very diligently as he got it like this afternoon. So we're going to touch on a lot of stuff as far as college football is concerned. Next week, we're going to get ready for the NFL, and we're also going to touch on college football week 1 because Joey and I were already looking towards that schedule. It's going to be a fun Labor Day weekend, college football coming out of our ears all the way through Monday. So, Joey, I'm super excited. This podcast literally just means football's back, and
it does.
There's nothing better than that. That's the best thing that could be.
I'm frozen. I don't know if you can hear me.
You are frozen. I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Sweet.
You're very frozen. We got our first froze of the season. So shout out technology.
StreamYard's only so reliable, but I do like the new view. Yeah, exciting stuff, man.
Little
it's
refresh.
Good to be back with you, okay? And it's good to be talking this stuff again and looking at the lines and all that. I've only looked at 1.5 of your 10 pages on this Google Doc, so
nice.
Take it away, man.
Yeah, man. My biggest thing is there's so much that changed in the college football landscape now. It's mind-numbing to say the least. So this was obviously for this, but also an exercise for myself to basically wipe the slate clean because a lot of things that you remember from 2023 aren't going to be in 2024. Things are changing. Schools are changing. And I think that's probably where we're going to start. Joey, conferences realigned again. The Big Ten is now up to 18 schools. The ACC is at 17. Power 5 is trimmed down to the Power 4. 2 teams left in the Pac-12. And the Big 12 and the SEC are up to 16 teams each. I don't know, man. We kind of saw this all on the horizon over the last few years. We talked about it a lot last year. It's going to be a few mega conferences and then the rest of everything else. But, I mean, are you excited? We're both Big Ten guys. We have a ton of new talent coming into the conference, which when you only send 2 teams to the Big Ten championship, it makes it even tougher.
Well, definitely excited. It should be interesting, but I don't think it's going to be that much different. And I think you give it half a season and everyone will be used to it by then. So, different times for a lot of people in terms of when they're tuning into games and stuff. But I think it's gonna be great. I'm excited. I'm an optimist here. So
yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people that are poo-pooing it. There's travel things. I don't worry about travel in the world of AAU and travel sports. It doesn't matter. That
well, we are a travel podcast when we do look at the lines and the trends and all of that. But
you have to.
But
you have to. You have to. Well, it'll be interesting to see because it is going to come into, hey, this team's traveled X amount of miles in the last few weeks. How is that doing? It'll be interesting because there are some pretty widespread schedules out there when you look at it. So I'm going to get into some of our new faces, new places, transfer portal edition. I tried to narrow this down to guys that people may know because they're mostly going to get touched on twice. No Diddy. It's really to the point where we're in college football free agency, Joey. Again, something that we both saw coming. It wasn't going to be surprising no matter what. Yeah. But there's a lot of new guys. So I'm going to hit rapid fire on these, hit some of the big ones. Ohio State starts this thing off. They had 3 big splashes. Will Howard now is quarterback. He was second team all Big 12 at Kansas State. Running back Quinshawn Judkins. He was the 2022 National Freshman Player of the Year. 2-team first team all SECs, had 2,700 yards and 31 touchdowns at Ole Miss. Also, if you play NCAA College Football 25, he's a cheat code. I think they've nerfed him a little bit. Safety Caleb Downs, he was the National Freshman Player of the Year last year, first team All-American as a freshman at Bama. He's going to hold it down defensively. Looking out on the West Coast, staying in the Big Ten, though, Oregon scooped up Dylan Gabriel. He's 30 touchdowns behind Case Keenum for the all-time career passing touchdown record. He's probably going to break that. So we're going to live in a world where Dylan Gabriel probably does that and gets drafted in like the 4th or 5th round. So that'll be cool. Honestly, right with Case Keenum. Miami, they picked up a couple of Pac-12 guys. Quarterback Cam Ward, he was at Incarnate Word a few years ago. Jumped to Wazoo, played well at Wazoo. He is now going to pair with Doak Walker semifinalist and twice first team all Pac-12 running back Damian Martinez. He was from Oregon State, great running back, had about 1,200 yards, I think, last year. Ward takes over for Tanner Van Dyke, who's now quarterback in my Wisconsin Badgers. As we stay in the Midwest and with quarterbacks, Duke quarterback Riley Leonard, good dual threat guy. He's taking over play calling duties at Notre Dame. Big year for Notre Dame. It's going to be interesting. They've got like a Hard Knocks type show coming out on Peacock that should be super interesting to watch. A buddy of mine who's a big Notre Dame fan is probably drooling all over himself, as Notre Dame fans are to do this time of year. Pivoting over to receiver, the Longhorns got in on the mini Alabama fire sale, grabbed Isaiah Bond. He's probably the Tide's number 1 option for 2024, in 2023. He went viral. He was one of the Lamborghini deal guys for Texas this year. That was always good to see. We'll talk more about that when we talk NIL in a little bit. DJ Uiagalelei, he joined a loaded portal class. He's going to be the starting quarterback at Florida State this year. This is his 3rd team in the past 3 seasons, jumps from Clemson to Oregon State to now Florida State. Should be interesting. Florida State we'll talk about in a little bit. Definitely interesting. Ole Miss, they had the number 1 ranked NIL class, not NIL, transfer portal class. Easy to get those crossed. Featured top D lineman, Texas A&M's Walter Nolan. He's a preseason Nagurski and Outland Trophy watch list guy. He's going to be a top draft pick. They got the number 1 edge guy, Princely, and I'm going to murder the fuck out of his last name. Uman Melen. That's a good first try at it.
Sounds good enough.
He was out of Florida, second team All SEC in 23. Wide receiver Juice Wells. He's going to be great. He had just under 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns at South Carolina in 22. Only played 3 games last year with a foot injury, so he's going to be one of the top targets for Jackson Dart down at Ole Miss. We'll talk about Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a really, really interesting deal. Other guys worth noting, KJ Jefferson, quarterback out of Arkansas. He jumps to UCF. Penny Boone is going to be there as well. He was one of the top backs in the MAC. So if you follow my match in action, you know who Kenny Boone is. Speaking of the MAC, top quarterback in the MAC, Curtis Rourke. He goes from Ohio to Indiana. He joins 13 players that jump ship, and James Madison, as Joey is in and out from the camera.
I can hear you.
I can. That works.
Yeah.
Audio show.
Rose.
But anyways, like I said, 13 players, 12 coaches from JMU jump ship. They're now with Indiana. Indiana is going to be a super interesting team in the Big Ten as they move forward. But that's kind of my quick rundown of big names that you may know that jumped in and out of the portal. There's a lot more guys. We'll still touch on a few when we jump into each and every conference here. I want to talk NIL a little bit, Joey. Even though I can't see, can you still hear me? Are you there?
Oh, I'm here, brother.
Terrific. NIL, we're 3 years into this thing. My question, good or bad, we're going to start in Texas. Isaiah Bond, Michael Taffe, they both get deals with Lamborghini of Austin. It's worth noting they did this for strong academics, so good for them. Nothing really new. Sark's been doing it for a few years. That, to me, at least there's a company tied to it. It's not just some random dude stroking them a check, even though it probably is to some extent. I wanted to talk about this one. Caitlin Clark. She passed up the number 1 pick in the WNBA the previous year because she was getting more money at Iowa. Now, obviously, women's sports a little bit different. There's not going to be a lot of guys, even though people have talked about Shedeur Sanders staying for another year because of all the NIL money that he's getting. Are we going to get to a point that NIL money is not going to have this cap? It's going to be a free-for-all forever. It feels like we're headed towards some sort of cap or some sort of, at least, you have to do this, but you can sign a contract. We got to feel like we're headed there, right?
Kind of feels like that. This shit's getting crazy, man.
Yeah, NIL is out of control. It's still the wild, wild west. But I had to make note, it paved the way for college football 25. So for all the things that may not be doing great, it's good to have that there.
You see your boy Brock Purdy is making less than like 4 or 5 college quarterbacks. I could be wrong about that number, but
no, you're probably right on the money. Brock Purdy is not exactly a what was he? Well, he was Mr. Irrelevant. He was a 7th round pick. So yeah, he's not exactly making big money. They walked through his condo in San Francisco, which Brock Purdy money. He's a normal ass dude in San Francisco.
He is a very normal dude in San Francisco.
That's normal people money. So that's tough. And California taxes.
That might be poor. That might be poor for San Francisco.
He might be struggling. That's unfortunate for Brock Purdy. But yeah, when I talk NIL, is it better to have collectives or actual NIL deals? I guess collectives are the guys that are cutting checks for no reason, can't really police it. They have these big funds. I know Wisconsin has a big NIL fund, which it's getting us guys like Tanner Van Dyke. I guess that's great. But I'm more of a fan of, getting commercials, sponsorship deals, being in college football 25, video games, things like that. But again, it's hard to police it. I kind of sit on the fence when it comes to NIL. I think the transfer portal is probably if we're talking the two things, the transfer portal kind of enables NIL because of, no sitting. So I think if we get another, you got to sit a year if you transfer, I think that'll change things. But again, I think they took it to court and it's not constitutional. So who the fuck knows? It's not going to end up well. Anything you want to touch on NIL or transfer portal before we kind of start getting into the conference previews?
No, you nailed it, man. I mean, it's getting crazy, and it's still in the infancy of it all, but it's in a few years. It'll be interesting to see where it goes in a few years for sure.
Yeah, feels like we're headed towards some sort of salary cap, or it's just some sort of cap in general
Right.
on the NIL. There's no way at this rate that it stays the way that it is, because even as a Wisconsin Badger fan, I thought we would kind of be out of the loop when it comes to transfer portal and not losing guys constantly, but we lost most of our receiver room like either last year or the year before. So, yeah, it's rough. But let's get into our Power Four preview because we are
Let's
no
do
longer in
it.
Power Five. We're going to start in the ACC, recap 2023 a little bit. Joey, for those that don't remember, Florida State had a fucking wild ride at the end of the season, and those of us like myself who had Florida State playoff tickets were just destroyed. Florida State,
It's a tough one.
Jordan Travis goes down, I believe, the second to last week of the season. Maybe it was the last week of the regular season. They go and I believe beat Louisville 16-6 in the conference championship game. They're undefeated. Playoff berth seems to be on the line. No, they and then they had to play Georgia and lost by 60, so they didn't deserve it either. It was unfortunate. Florida
That was
State,
a tough one.
yeah, we had to. I was all over them all season long, and yeah, I feel for Florida State fans. That's really really tough. Moving down the list, Clemson, kind of a little bit of a fall from grace. It's been a few years since we've seen Dabo in the
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
and for the college football playoff. Obviously, now with it expanded, they should definitely be back in the conversation at least. Drake May, I called it at the beginning of the year, man. Drake May regression, and not a great year for UNC. UNC has a lot of pieces to pick up that we'll talk about here in a second. This one here might be my favorite fact about 2023 in the ACC. A Georgia Tech quarterback led the conference in passing touchdowns and interceptions, but I mean, that's just outstanding. I live in a world, in my mind, Georgia Tech is running the ball 90% of the time, and to see Haynes King actually doing that, it was great. And out of the other top 6 quarterbacks, the other 5 are gone. So this is a lot of new faces, Joey. The ACC, like we said, expanding as well. It'll be interesting, but we got to start at the top, and I want to make sure that I get the odds right because Bet Openly has odds posted that are a little bit better than what we're seeing at some of the traditional books, which is not surprising, Joey. Not surprising at all. Let's talk FSU. FSU comes in odds-on favorite. They are plus 333 right now on Bet Openly. DJ Uiagalelei leading the way. A ton of transfer portal help. They get Bama ship jumpers, running back Roydell Williams, wide receiver Malik Benson. They'll probably be the 2 top contributors when it comes to their offense. Their defense, kind of the way that this team moves. If the defense does well, they're going to win games. Right now, their win total sits at 9.5. It's interesting that FSU, I don't think very highly of DJ Uiagalelei. I know you've watched him obviously over the years too. He's just somebody that everywhere he goes, there's hype, and I've never seen him be halfway worth of shit.
Hey, he was kind of your guy last year
He was for a very short period of time.
Remember?
And
you were
completely got locked out and fucked me like 3 games in a row. So yeah, no, not a huge DJ fan. But after Florida State, you get Clemson, Miami, NC State, Louisville. All of these teams are priced between plus 400. And I think Louisville is actually out to plus 889 on Bet Openly. They're plus 600 in a lot of books. Honestly, if you're trying to, I don't know who's going to book it. You got to hope somebody books it. There's really good prices if you're betting conferences. Let's talk Clemson here for a second. Cade Klubnik back. He's going to feature one of the league's top running backs. Phil Maffa, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns in the Notre Dame game last year. For those of you that remember that. This is Clemson looking at a 9.5 win total with some plus money on the over. Looking at Miami, they get the Pac-12 cast-offs. We talked about them before. It's Cam Ward and Damian Martinez on offense. Defense is replacing 9 starters. Big question mark heading into the season. The over at 9.5 is juiced. This is a team to me, Joey. Write it down right now. Miami overs are going to be popping early on in the season. I want to see who Miami's playing, actually.
They got Florida.
Florida's fucking garbage, too.
Yeah.
Give me whatever line they have in that game, and I'll bet it 3 times over. There might be a line on that, actually. There is. Does that say 53? 53.5. I'm gonna bet that with my cock. Florida.
I think you should do it right now. Why not? I saw it earlier. I'm scrolling now to see.
So it's 53.5 there, and Bet Openly says, oh, we're so back.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be a long ways out, but
it must be nice. Okay, that's 3:30 on Saturday the 31st. Oh,
they don't have week ones yet. That's okay.
Yeah, no.
I'll get to it. I trust my line will be good on that. Love the over.
We'll have that on there soon.
Yeah, love the over spot 53.5, Florida and Miami in week 1. Anyways, back to what I was getting to with Miami. Like I said, 9.5 win total. NC State, this is a really interesting team. I'm super high on NC State this fall. They have Coastal Carolina's Grayson McCall at quarterback. Probably should have listed him in the new faces section. He's going to slot in with a few other big transfers on offense. They did lose Conference Player of the Year Peyton Wilson on defense. That's tough. The defense has been top 3 in scoring for the past 3 seasons, so it's tough to tell exactly where they'll be. Their win total is 8.5, the under being priced at even money. It'll be interesting. I like NC State a lot. I don't know if I like them over 8.5 quite as much. I guess we'll see how they play over the first few weeks. The last of the group is Louisville. They fell a game shy of a conference title. I still don't know how they didn't beat Florida State with Travis's backup in there. Brian Brom, he has his first kind of case of turnover as head coach after he took over from Purdue last year. He did bring in Texas Tech quarterback Tyler Show, never really caught on, had a bunch of injuries. The defense should be in the top half. I just really don't know what to expect. Their total is 8.5. The over is pretty juiced. When you look at the middle schools here, Virginia Tech plus 1,000 to win the conference. Actually, let me back it up here. Any of those teams in the ACC really like, Joey? I don't get overly excited about teams not, honestly, outside of the Big Ten and the SEC, there's not a ton of teams in the ACC that excite me at all.
I think Cam Ward on Miami is pretty interesting.
That I agree with that. If there's one team that I'm like,
he was also one of your guys last year. And
yes, he was.
He was really nice at Washington State. So that is something worth monitoring.
100%. I agree.
Outside of that, oh, wait, no, we're talking ACC. I'm going to shout out my boy Dickey, a Hokie grad. They are a bit of a long shot to make the playoff, but they are returning most, if not all, starters. And
11 starters on offense.
All starters on offense, and their quarterback is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the country, from what I'm hearing.
I have heard good things about them.
Something to keep your eye on as well.
I can't say I haven't heard good things about them. But
Brent Pry's Brent Pry's a lot to prove. Yeah, I don't know much about them, but they that at least interests me. You know,
yeah, 11 starters on offense returning for Virginia Tech is at least worth, something. Whether or not they were super
Kyron Drones,
impressive.
That's the guy. He's plus 10,000 to win the Heisman.
There you go. You could sprinkle. Can you imagine if Virginia Tech turned around like that? That'd be wild. SMU is in the Power 4. Feels right. Shout out to my guy and old co-host Jeremiah. He's on staff down at SMU. UNC has their hands full. They replaced Drake May. The bottom half of this conference is a big question mark. Cal and Stanford are at the very bottom with 3.5 and 4.5 win totals. Duke, Syracuse, Wake Forest, and Pitt. I remember when it was Wake Forest and Pitt battling it out for a championship. Duke as well. These teams went from contenders to praying for some bowl eligibility, and then at the very, very bottom you get UVA, BC, who we kind of joked about before, and then Georgia Tech. So yeah, Georgia Tech is going to be an interesting one there at the bottom because Haynes King does return. It'll be interesting to see if he doesn't turn the ball over as much. But like I said, I'm not super bought in on the ACC, but we will see how this season shakes out. Any last words for the ACC there, Joey?
Nah.
Nah.
Those will be good noon games, but
there will be a lot of good noon and 11 o'clock kickoffs in the ACC.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
Yeah, nothing else really for the ACC.
Awesome. All right, well, let's move on to, I guess, the number 3 conference. I mean, you could fight the ACC and the Big 12 all day long. The Big 12, Joey, the Big 12 has changed a little bit.
Yeah, here we go.
Let's take a look at 23 first. Texas and Oklahoma, they go out with a bang. Texas makes the college football playoff. Oklahoma did miss the Big 12 championship game, Oklahoma State. And Ollie Gordon show is going to be a fun one. We'll talk about him in a little bit. They looked really good in bowl season. They were 5-1 before Iowa State, OU, and Texas all lost. The one big thing to me that stands out, and we'll talk about him a little bit, one of my favorite bets coming into the season, Kansas football is back, man. Lance Leopold did it, ex-UW Whitewater coach. Another thing from 23, BYU, Cincy, UCF, Houston, all newcomers. They all stunk in their first year. And now you bring in Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and ASU. And let's start with the favorites to win the whole damn league, man. Not often do you join a conference and you're immediately picked to win said conference. I want to pull up my odds here on Bet Openly. But moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, it's the Utah Utes. They're plus 306 to win this thing. Cam Rising's back, and more importantly, he's healthy. Cam Rising being back is great. Cam Rising being healthy is way more important. He battled injuries, hindered the Utes from competing for a Pac-12 title last season. Dorian Singer, we talked about Dorian Singer last year. He started at Arizona, played great, went to USC. USC just didn't look right last year, and now he is joining the Utah Utes. I think he's going to be a really, really good addition. He might be one of the top receivers in the country when it's all said and done. Defense gets a lot of support from the portal. They get a lot of help from a team that allowed less than 20 points per game last season. Joey, their win total sits at 9.5, a very expensive overprice. Any thoughts on the Utes? Obviously, Cam Rising is going to be on the Heisman watch list right away as long as he can stay healthy.
No, that's it. You said it. You nailed it. They've been super exciting the past few years. So, yeah, they're pretty cool going into this year.
Yeah, it'll be a good spot for them. Kansas State's going to be an interesting one. They're plus 417 to win the league. They lose Will Howard to Ohio State, and they're going to have but they're going to have a solid backfield. DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards. Yes, Dylan Edwards out of Colorado, for those of you that remember the beginning of Colorado's run last year. He's going to be joining Giddens, who had over 1,200 yards for the Wildcats. 7 starters return on defense. Should stay solid. They allow 21 points per game. Their win total, also 9.5. However, theirs is plus money on the over. Talked about him a little bit just a few minutes ago. Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State. If you played college football 25, you know Ollie Gordon. And he's going to be on every Heisman list that you read. He's probably the most dominant player in this conference. Alan Bowman is back under center. He's okay. But the biggest thing for Oklahoma State, they're probably the best offensive line in football. And that's probably a reason why Ollie Gordon, I'm having a real hard time with Ollie's name. Holy shit. But that's probably why he's as good as he is it is one of the best offensive lines in football.
Yeah.
Now,
there's QR codes now.
yeah, I saw that. Go into that more.
Oh, I don't know. I just saw it right before we started recording. So I have no idea, but I don't know what it's for, but they have QR codes on their helmets.
Yeah, there's a bunch of that going on. I know Colorado's got their handles on the back, which I think they did last year. But anyways, back to Oklahoma State. On defense, they need to get way better. It's second year under D coordinator Brian Nardo. They were among the worst against the pass last season. That does not work, especially in the Big 12. They have an 8.5 win total this year, plus money on the over. So looking at an under, it'll be interesting to see how Oklahoma State does. I kind of mentioned that before. Kansas is back. Lance Leopold, for those of you that live in the state of Wisconsin, you know the lore behind UW Whitewater. This man ran an absolute fucking dynasty at Whitewater, went to Buffalo, and then I think he goes Buffalo to Kansas. I don't know if there was a stop in between Kansas and Buffalo. Anyways, 9 wins last season. He is bringing back Jalen Daniels, not Jalen, whatever it is. Great quarterback, super, super dynamic. The hype's never really been higher. They get a new offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes, coming in via Baylor. Should be a good add to the unit. He was also BYU's OC with Zach Wilson, who was the LSU offensive line coach for their national championship game. So he's got a really solid resume. On defense, Kansas, they allowed just 11 touchdown passes last year, which to me just was mind-boggling. If they improve even marginally, this is going to be a really good team. Joey, their win total is 8.5. I'm probably going to end up putting 2 units on this. I got to figure out if I can get this down on Bet Openly if I have to go offshore. But I am super, super excited about Kansas. But if you remember, I was super excited about Kansas last year too.
I was going to say, I've said this a few times on this pod already, but he was also your guy last year, Daniels.
Yeah.
You loved
when he's
him
healthy.
You loved him too. So maybe I think these will be your guys again this season.
My baby boys. Yeah, I got a whole group of guys that I surprised stayed. Like, I'm surprised Daniels stayed. There's a lot of good quarterback play that we're going to see this year, in my opinion. The next group of teams in the Big 12, you got UCF, Iowa State, Arizona, Texas Tech. New face on the block, Arizona. They went from 1 win in 21. They had 5 wins in 22, and then they get 10 wins in 23. But unfortunately, Jed Fish, he's gone. He's going to Washington. Noah Fifita, that's a name you want to know. Good quarterback. Going to be probably one of the top in the country. Wildcats number, they're 7.5. They're about 10-1 to win the conference. So that'll be an interesting team.
Fifita too.
I would keep an eye on him.
He's top 10 in preseason Heisman rankings right now. So
absolutely. Do you have his odds?
I'm seeing an offshore book plus 1620.
Nice.
Offshore, sometimes where it's at, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Iowa State, you look at a 7.5 win total. Matt Campbell's crazy as fuck. Still, I think they're going to sit in the middle of the conference unless the offense takes a massive leap. They're not a team that I expect a whole lot of this year. But always excited to watch Matt Campbell lose his mind on the sideline. He's one of our favorites.
Yeah, he's a nut. That guy's a nut.
That's a perfect way to put it. He's an absolute nut. Texas Tech, they're going to go as far as their All-American running back Taj Brooks takes them. They lose 3 of their top 4 receivers. We also saw quarterback Aaron Morton. He looked really good at times. He looked unplayable at times. They have a 7.5 win total that looks pretty accurate for Texas Tech. I don't have much to go. Brooks will be another guy that probably has some decent Heisman odds as they move towards the season. UCF, though, this is a team that I really wanted to talk about. KJ Jefferson was one of my guys that didn't go well at Arkansas, but now he's at UCF, and they've also got running back RJ Harvey. Gus Malzahn, it feels like he's got himself an 8 or a 9 win team. 7.5 feels really low to me, but it's probably just me buying into KJ Jefferson again. So KJ may or may not have just gotten really fat and signed a bunch of NIL deals. but that's to be seen. I hope that he has a good season. Hopefully UCF is a new look for him because he really needed it. Let's see. So you move down after the second tier. We get into TCU, West Virginia, and Colorado. TCU and West Virginia, they both kind of return guys offensively. They both lack game changers. Joey, you're going to see West Virginia week 1. Was that right?
That will be on the 31st, correct?
Oh, the 30. Yep, perfect. So you get to see them early. Colorado, I don't really feel like spending a whole lot of time on Colorado.
Yeah.
We did that plenty of last year. Win total for them 5.5. So that'll be really interesting. I had their win total last year. I think it was 4.5, 3.5. It was low.
It was 3.5. Yeah.
It was low.
It was hovering right around 4 from what I remember, and they got that.
It was a little sweaty because they burned out fast. So, hey, man, if Colorado can get an offensive line, a defensive line, linebackers, tight ends, basically everything but skill position players and DBs, yeah, man, they'll be really good. But until then, to be seen. Let's move along. Or actually, we do have the bottom of the conference. We do have to mention Baylor, Cincinnati, Arizona State, Houston, and BYU. But I'm not really jumping into any of those teams. Do you want to jump into the SEC there, Joey, or want to talk anything left in the Big 12?
All on you, my man. I'm good.
All right, man. SEC looking at 23. Final year of Saban. Bama loses in the Rose Bowl to Michigan, but they do get the last laugh, a victory over Kirby Smart and UGA in the SEC championship game. Same UGA team going for a three-peat. Unfortunate loss to Bama. They just shit down Florida State's throat in the Peach Bowl or whatever New Year's Six Bowl they ended up playing in that nobody really cared about, but apparently Georgia took very personally. Missouri and Ole Miss both won 11 games, finished 8th and 9th in the AP poll. They both return a bunch of guys and should be super exciting. Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, they're going to be the 2 Heisman hopefuls. Obviously, Ewers was not in the conference last year, but he is going to be one of the top names that you talk about this year. Speaking of Ewers, Texas and Oklahoma, the SEC, man, they expanded to 16 teams. Didn't make the 18-team jump that some people did. Honestly, good for them. 18 is a lot of teams. Not a surprise to anyone. Georgia is the favorite to win the conference. They are plus 200 at the regular book. Man, that is crazy. Plus 200 to win the SEC. And plus 200 to win on Bet Openly. So, yeah, the house is worried about Georgia, man. The Dogs, they were a one hiccup short of another shot at a natty. Carson Beck, another year under his belt, had 4,000 yards. Big one for them. Running back Trevor Etienne transfers in from Florida. Great lineage of running back play at Georgia, so it'll be a good add for them. They return their wide receiver corps with a couple of transfers added for depth. Offensive line, 2 previous All-Americans. Realistically, they could have 1 or 2 more by the end of the year. The defense, never been an issue. That should continue. They did allow almost 40 yards per game more versus the run last season, but they got 6 starters returning. They should only improve. Their win total, buddy, it's 10.5 with a hefty price on the over. It's going to be another year of the Dogs, and I don't really see anybody in the SEC competing with Georgia as it sits, but it's college football. Things change. What do you think about the Dogs as we move into the fall?
Yeah, already looking at some NFL mocks, for those Giants, and that's where Beck is linked to already. So
Carson Beck feels like a perfect New York Giant.
Shit. Yeah, they're gonna be freaking good again, man. So yeah, we'll see. I think Beck's got the highest odds for Heisman too.
Feels like time for a Georgia guy to win it.
So Beck is tied with Gabriel and Quinn Ewers. So, they're all plus 720 on this offshore book from what I'm seeing. And
interesting. Yeah, if you're doing Heisman bets, you got to do it early on in the season and then kind of play it as you go. It makes it for a whole lot fun. unless Michael Penix gets it stolen from him.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
you're big sad. But yeah, Georgia's going to be good. Georgia's number one foe is going to be Texas, in my opinion. They're probably coming into this season with more hype than they've ever had. Obviously, joining the SEC is plenty, but Quinn Ewers is back. We talked about it. The offense, they returned 4 of 5 offensive linemen. They also hit the portal hard. We talked about Isaiah Bond already. They also went and got Silas Bolden. He's a wide receiver out of Oregon State, and Matthew Golden, as well as Alabama tight end Amari Niblack. Those guys all combined for 2,500 yards and 20 touchdowns last season at their respective schools. The defense is really the only thing that is maybe a concern. They finished in the middle of the pack in the Big 12, but it's tough. You don't really know. Obviously, their recruiting only gets better as they enter the SEC. They lose a couple of really good interior linemen, but to compete in the SEC, you got to be elite on both sides of the ball. So that'll be big for them to see how that defense improves. Their win total sits at 10.5, leaning very heavily towards the under. I think it was like minus 180 for the under. So what are you thinking? You horns up or horns down this year, Joey?
Oh, all the way up. All the way up.
Okay, horns up for Joey. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't know. It's going to be tough. It's going to be I think it's going to be a much bigger jump than people understand, jumping from the Big 12 to the SEC, especially with the SEC being probably the most parity that the SEC has ever seen. So, and a big part of that
so too, but I think they're more prepared than I think them and Oklahoma are the most prepared teams compared to anyone else who would be joining.
I can appreciate that. Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. And in Oklahoma, obviously, if you add or keep Dylan Gabriel, you feel a whole lot better. We'll talk about Oklahoma a little bit later on.
Look like Texas. They open up home against Colorado State, then they're going to Michigan, which they should win.
Should win at Michigan
right now. They should win. Then a couple cupcakes. Mississippi State might be a bit of a challenge, but that they're home for that one, so they shouldn't. And then they're at Oklahoma. Red River rivalry is October 12th, which I believe is the best day of the year for college football.
Yep.
And then they're in Athens on October 19th. So that 2-week stretch, I mean, they're pretty much cruising until the Oklahoma-Texas stretch or Oklahoma-Georgia stretch. Because I'm not high on Michigan. I think they'll be undefeated going into Oklahoma.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And probably one of the reasons that we're going to see the most parity is guys like Nick Saban are gone, and guys like Kalen DeBoer have to take over, probably filling the biggest shoes in college football history, you could maybe say. I know he wasn't the all-time winningest coach, right? I don't think he was. But the consistency was unmatched. It's going to be no easy task.
Right.
This program saw 60 players hit the transfer portal this offseason. Quarterback Jalen Milroe, really the only impact player returning on offense. The defense, probably going to be the roughest that we've seen in 2+ decades. It's a big question mark. The Tide, a 9.5 win total, probably the lowest that I've seen ever since I paid attention to the win totals. And I don't even know if you can go back and look to see the last time that this win total was this low for the Tide. But, man, it's going to be tough. 60 guys jumping in the transfer portal and losing one of the best, if not the best, coach of all time. It's going to be a tough year for Alabama. Wisconsin gets them, I think, week 3 in Madison. So I'm sure we'll still lose, but we get them at probably the most vulnerable time.
It's different year, man. Different year for a lot of teams, a lot of conferences, everything going on. So we're excited though, Kane. We're back.
We are. And that's the thing is, like, it does feel like we're getting a refresh of a new college football. We have the video game come out. We have all this new conference. NIL, right. The players are more accessible than they've ever been. So more superstars than you've ever known. And talking to superstars, you want to talk about a superstar, Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, this dude, they got the lane train cooking down in Oxford. Another team that I have probably hyped up more than I should have over the past few years. Their number is 9.5. They won 11 games last year. Super excited to see how they do. Jackson Dart, like I said, they also have the number one recruiting class, or not recruiting, rather, the number one transfer portal class in the country. It'll be really cool to see how Ole Miss does in a year where the SEC is pretty vulnerable. Once you get past Georgia, obviously, at one, there's obviously an opening for two that Ole Miss could compete for.
Yeah. The Dart man, he was nice last year. Didn't he have an injury scare last week? And sorry,
Yeah,
I'm just talking out of my ass right now. I'm just scrolling on Twitter while I'm frozen here. So
nice. Yeah, I don't recall that he had one, but if he did, that would suck for them.
No, I think it was just a scare over the past week.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
no, he was balling last year. He was great. They were fun to watch.
Yeah, they're going to be great.
Report 7 hours ago. Oklahoma State players will wear QR codes on their helmets this season that link to the general team fund for every student athlete on the roster. Okay.
Oh, so it's just more giving the kids money. Okay, well, get the boys paid. I'm all cool with that. When you look at the SEC and you jump to that plus 1,000 to plus 1,500 range, you get LSU at plus 1,000, Tennessee plus 1,400, A&M plus 1,400, Missouri plus 1,500. Let's start in the Bayou. LSU, the Tigers, they've won 10 games each of the past 2 seasons under Brian Kelly. However, Heisman quarterback gets drafted number 2. Your star wide receiver goes number 6. You got some work to do. Garrett Nussmeier is going to be the quarterback down there. Don't really know a whole lot of him over the past 3 seasons. Haven't really seen him play meaningful football. Defensively, LSU objectively bad since Kelly's takeover, which is really weird. They allowed 33 points per game in conference last season. It's going to be really interesting to see. I think their win total, I didn't have it here, I think it was 9.5 for LSU. A team that I don't know how many years Brian Kelly gets before he needs to be in the conversation as one of the best teams in the SEC, but hard to say. College football is jumpy. Any thoughts on the Tigers?
No, not. There is a lot of hype around that guy, but a lot of big shoes to fill there. My guy Neighbors, he's gone too. So
big strip club guy, Malik Neighbors. Big strip club guy.
I think that was a one-time thing.
Oh, I'm sure it was. If I know 20-year-old guys with a bunch of money, they don't like strip clubs.
Yeah,
but so next, moving on in the SEC, get ready to pronounce the name Nico. I believe it's Lavea. Hi, I'm not doing good with pronunciations. Anyways, sophomore quarterback's taking the reins. If you guys remember, he got a $10 million deal, I think, as a junior for NIL. So he's finally taking the reins. It was a tough year in Knoxville last year, but this offense is going to be fun. He's got a trio of receivers, and listen to this trio of names. You get Squirrel White, Brew McCoy, and Chris Brazzell. It's going to be a fun offense to watch. It'll be interesting to see if Nico can actually be the guy that he is paid to be at this point. He's only a sophomore, so obviously he's going to have 2 years to really figure this thing out unless he jumps in the transfer portal, which is not out of the question. But what is the question is the defense. Can they keep teams in check? That's been Tennessee's issue over the past few years. They have a 9.5 win total with it leaning under. Moving on to Missouri. Incredible season for Missouri. 11-2 last year. And honestly, a team that can position themselves up there again. You get Brady Cook at quarterback. He's going to throw to one of the best receivers in the country. If you haven't, I'm going to tell you, go watch a YouTube video, Luther Burden III. I did it a few days ago. He is so much fun to watch. And all of their top 4 receivers are back, and their top tight end. It's going to be interesting. The defense gets a new scheme, but really hard not to be excited if you're a Tigers fan. Their win total sits at 9.5. The price leans heavily under. Tougher schedule as far as ranking goes. I'd have to dig in and kind of see who they play when they play, but interesting team, Missouri, to say the least. Any thoughts on your end for the other Tigers?
Another team that was very exciting last year, especially towards the end. So with those guys coming back, no, don't sleep on them. They can make some noise.
Yeah, a team that I am going to sleep on, continue to sleep on until they show me otherwise. The Texas A&M Aggies, they sit in college football purgatory. They've won between 7 and 9 games in all but one of the past 11 seasons. I loved Mike Elko at Duke, but his doomsday clock starts immediately. The boosters in Aggieland do not fuck around. Both Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher, they were given 5 years to contend for a national title. Year 6, you're gone. And as far as personnel, Connor Wiegman's back after missing most of the season last year at quarterback. It is going to be cool. He's going to be thrown to Moose Muhammad the third. So obviously, I grew up with Moose and Muhammad. So we get to see the offspring Moose out there. Elko's a defensive guy. I expect the team to get better on the defensive side of the ball. You're looking at a win total of 8.5. I would fade that shit all day long. I'm not a big fan of A&M at all. Looking at the next batch of teams that are a little bit in no man's land, you get Oklahoma, Auburn, and Kentucky. Hugh Freeze entering his second year at Auburn. He's got Peyton Thorne, who came over from Michigan State a couple years ago. He's back at quarterback. Jaquez Hunter is a top 3 back in the SEC, probably a top 15 back in the country. They've got a new defensive coordinator. They do return 5 starters. Number to beat 7.5. The odds lean heavily under. We both know Peyton Thorne are both not big fans of Peyton Thorne, so I won't jump into that too much unless you want to.
No, all you, brother.
OU swaps out Dylan Gabriel for a mostly unproven Jackson Arnold. He's a sophomore. Played really well. I shouldn't say really well. He had 3 interceptions in the bowl game. He's going to take over an offense that averaged north of 40 points per game, but again, in the Big 12, so take that as you will. The Sooners lost offensive coordinator Jeff Levy to Mississippi State, so it is a little bit of a transition period. I fear the defense may give up 50 points per game in the SEC. It's going to be a real tough sled for them. Their win total is 7.5. I'd be ecstatic with 8 wins as a Sooner fan this season. I do not have high hopes for Oklahoma.
Yeah, losing Gabriel is tough. That's really all I got to say about them. I mean, he was their guy, but I think he's going to do big things at Oregon. I know I'm bouncing around here, but
no,
I like him to win the Heisman. I'm laser focused on Heisman odds right now.
Well, we're going to get there in just a minute. We got a little bit longer. Kentucky, big question mark. They bring in Boise State head coach Brush Hammond to retool their offense. Defense allowed nearly 30 points per game, but they do return 9 starters, so we'll see how that goes. 6.5 win total feels a little generous, but we'll see. We round out the SEC with the likes of Florida, South Carolina, Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Vandy. Florida, they are balls deep in the Graham Mertz experience. He did look decent last year. Defense sucks eggs. 33.6 points per game in 23. 4.5 win total. That's brutal in Gainesville. We'll see how long Billy Napier is still the coach down there. South Carolina did bring in Arkansas running back Rocket Sanders. Should be a boost for the offense that was completely mid in 23. The defense, they ran a 3.35 late last year, but really needs to improve on their consistency to clear a 5.5 win total. And the very bottom of the conference, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vandy, they are all swill. We are not going to dive into any of those 3 teams. Joey, we're going to jump to our conference, our favorite conference, the Big 10, the Big 18, the Big 18, Joey, the Big fucking 18. Did you see the new Big 10 commercial?
I did. It's great.
It's gorgeous.
Not much has changed.
They literally just made it a little bit different, but
if it ain't broke,
completely retool it.
Exactly. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That was a good sight to see last week when it came out, or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. So, so happy for that.
100%. Looking at the 2023 brief recap, Harbaugh and Michigan, they finally get over the hump, win their national championship, beat Ohio State again. Speaking of Ohio State, that's their 3rd straight multi-loss season, which has not happened, Joey, in 14 years. So it'll be interesting to see how long Ryan Day's leash is if they don't get to winning here real soon. Northwestern shocked the country, finished 8-5, second in the Big Ten West after, let's say, chaotic preseason for Northwestern last year. And Iowa wins the Big Ten West despite averaging 15.5 points per game. That was hilarious. We were big fans of watching Iowa's point totals as the weeks went on. But yeah, 23 in the Big Ten was an interesting one. Neither of our teams made a ton of noise on either side, so it'll be interesting. We'll talk about both of ours here in a second. Looking at 24, hello to Oregon, USC, Washington, and UCLA. Those are the 4 new teams out west. It'll be interesting to see how they all roll. Starting, let's get the odds. The Big Ten. Ohio State, I'm seeing plus 167 on Bet Openly, around plus 150 at your standard book to win the conference. It's a wild price, Joey. That's a wild price. The defense we talked about a little bit before. Caleb Downs comes in. He's going to be one of 3 All-Americans on that side of the ball. They allowed 11 points per game last season. If Ryan Day's done anything, he's boosted the defensive intensity. The issue last year was the offense, and the fix, Joey, it's Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly is the fix. Kelly comes in as the new offensive coordinator. Immediately is going to help them improve, in my opinion. You get transfer quarterback Will Howard, running back Quinshon Judkins. They're going to head up that offense. Emeka Ugba is going to be the next star wide receiver to go in the first round. The offensive line was shaky last year, but they've got 4 starters back. So 10.5 win total. Price leans heavily on the over, so Vegas is really thinking they're going to win 11, 12, 13 games. But yeah, man, Chip Kelly, that's going to be the big one in my opinion. How can Chip reshape this offense, and can he extend Ryan Day's career? That's the biggest question in my opinion.
Big Chip. Yeah, that should be interesting. That's a good team though, man. And Michigan's going to take a step back. Day is under some pressure. 2 of the best running backs in the nation in the backfield. So that's, I mean, come on. They're scary.
It's a team that's hard not to believe in, honestly.
Yeah.
And I hate Ohio State just as much as the next guy, but feels like their kind of year.
It does.
See how that goes.
It really does. Shit.
Next, Oregon Ducks. They plan to not miss a beat in the Big Ten. Vegas thinks that they won't. The Ducks have the second best odds to win at plus 225. Our mind immediately snaps to Dylan Gabriel. We've talked about him at length already. One of the highest rated portal acquisitions that we've ever seen at this point. You throw in a pair of All-American receivers with Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson. They combined for over 2,500 yards and 24 touchdowns. The backfield's solid. They do lose Bucky Irving. Loved Bucky Irving. Thought he was great. Jordan Williams did average over 7 yards per carry with over 100 attempts. So he has absolute potential to be a first-team All-Big Ten selection in a conference that has outstanding running back play. Defensively, they hit the portal hard. They brought in one of my favorite DBs, Washington's Jabbar Muhammad. He should head up one of the Big Ten's best secondaries. We got even money on a 10.5 win total for the Ducks. I think the Ducks are going to be good. You talk about it, as a team. Obviously, you're big on Dylan Gabriel. The guy's got his targets. The defense should be good. I do believe in the coach over there. It seems like a very good team in Oregon as well.
Oh, yeah. Lanning's a maniac. He doesn't give a fuck. Him and Gabriel, that's a good pairing. They're returning a bunch, as you said. I like them a lot heading into this year. Yeah.
What is their national championship odds for Oregon?
I was just thinking that. Yeah, I don't know, but something.
National championship winner, the Oregon Ducks are third at plus 778. You get Georgia at plus 333, Ohio State plus 361, Oregon plus 778. Whew. Steady and ahead. That's going to be an interesting one. Oregon's going to be really interesting to be in the Big Ten. I am not excited for the Badgers to play them this year. I think that's going to be a bloodbath. Let's talk about your team, Joey.
Talking about them with these other teams, but that's the new world we live in.
That is. Let's talk about your boys. Penn State Nittany Lions, third best odds to take the cake at plus 500 to win the conference. They are returning Drew Aller through 25 touchdowns, 2 interceptions last year. Kansas's OC is now calling the
Yes.
plays, so that'll be
Yep,
awesome
that's
for
a big
you.
one.
Oh, big win for you guys.
That's a big one. That's the biggest change, I think, from last year.
For you guys, well, I mean, that's the biggest thing. Although they led the league in scoring, you score 12 points against Ohio State, 15 points against Michigan. That's just not going to cut it. You know, you need to be elite in those situations, and they weren't. You guys have a terrific 1-2 punch. Singleton and Allen in the backfield.
Oh, yeah.
A few unknowns at receiver, but it seems like you guys always seem to figure that out. Do you know your receivers offhand?
No, Lambert Smith left for, I think, Auburn.
Yep.
But I like the optimism coming from your camp, and I kind of agree there. The two-headed monster in the backfield is going to lead the way, and I think Aller is good enough to make these relatively lesser-known guys more well-known. So at receiver, that is. So I'm not so worried about that. That has been a big concern, and they always find tight ends too. So I'm not so worried. I think the OC coming from Kansas, the guy they had last year before they canned him was not great. So it's exciting with a new guy calling the plays. Yeah,
absolutely. And defensively, you get another new coordinator. IU's old coach Tom Allen takes over for the now Duke head coach Manny Diaz. The Lions, they've been top 10 in scoring the past couple of years. I think they were third 2 years ago. Look to do that again. Largely reloading, replacing both starting corners. That'll be tough. The number is 9.5, leaning heavily on the over. I think if that was relatively decently priced, I would be all over that over at 9.5. But I guess I haven't looked at your schedule. But
the schedule's the schedule is definitely a little stronger than. I mean, they don't have Oregon, which is big.
Always good.
So
that leads me to believe that you have both Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah, starting off against West Virginia, I mean, that's not a walk in the park. I don't know much about Illinois, but Penn State is home for that one, so hopefully they take care of business. UCLA, I'm not even going to talk about. They do play at USC. That is a winnable game, but that doesn't make me feel super comfortable. And then they go to your neck of the woods, Madison. They have a bye week, and then they go to Madison.
Ooh, back-to-back bye weeks. Good for you.
A week after Madison, they're home against Ohio State. Then they're home against Washington. That's a tough stretch right there. And that's typically when they start breaking down. So
they do have a little bit of
I'm not super hopeful myself. It's kind of same shit new year. But we'll see. One can hope.
Absolutely. One can always hope. Let's move along to Michigan. When you talk Michigan, you'd be foolish not to talk about the defense. One of the top front sevens in the nation. They did hit the portal to help their secondary. Offensively, I don't know what the hell there was to expect. McCarthy's gone, Corum's gone, Wilson gone, all playing on Sundays. It's really going to be up to Donovan Edwards. Quarterback still a question mark. You got Jack Tuttle and Alex Orji, I think is Orji, battling for the starting role. Tuttle is more of a McCarthy, where Orji is more of a Jalen Milroe type quarterback. Wolverines have an 8.5 win total. We're going to talk about the other team that was in the national championship. That's brutal to come back and have that. Obviously, Harbaugh's gone. I'm not high on Michigan. I won't bet on Michigan early on in the season. I'll kind of feel them out as we go. What are your thoughts on the Wolverines? Oh, I lost Joey. Whatever. I'll finish it out. After the top 4 seeds, second tier of the Big Ten, that includes USC, Washington, Nebraska, and Iowa, all keeping their conference title odds under plus 10,000. USC, they're going to adapt to post-Caleb Williams life. They'll do it with Miller Moss In the Holiday Bowl, he had 372 yards and 6 touchdowns. The kid can chuck it. There should be some optimism coming into this season for this team. Most of the skill position guys are going to be stepping into much bigger roles, so we'll see how that goes for them. Now, the defense can't really get much worse. They did poach UCLA defensive coordinator D'Anton Lynn, who had the number 2 scoring defense in the Pac-12 last season. Will it translate to the Big Ten? We'll see if he can get this group in order. They need a big boost to clear their win total, which is sitting at 7.5. This year, we don't get to make fun of Iowa's offense quite as much now that the coordinator's job doesn't rely on a precise points per game figure. We do get to point and laugh because they punt their opponents into submission, albeit without All-American Torrey Taylor. He's now in the NFL. They are going to start Cade McNamara. He didn't play a whole lot last season. They only had 15 points per game. So they really can't get any worse. Iowa's number is 8.5. It's leaning under. I just really hope Iowa crashes and burns being a Badger fan. So we'll see how that goes. Dylan Raiola. Let's talk about him a little bit. Freshman, 5-star guy. Oh, Joey just texted me. Head to... Oh, tough scene. Joey's out for the rest of the episode. No big deal. We're almost done here. Let's talk Dylan Raiola, 5-star quarterback for Nebraska. I don't think he's going to do it right away. Probably the most hyped Nebraska recruit in a couple decades. They've got some Power 5 transfers, Power 4 transfers, I guess now, filling in at skill positions, but they're all largely untested. Defense last year was great, held opponents to 20 points per game. Win total 7.5. Vegas sees them improving from 5-7 from a year ago. Another team that I really don't want to see get better as a Badger fan, but Nebraska, things are looking up. Where things aren't looking up, I feel for Washington. And as a better of theirs last year, they really helped me crawl out of a shitty hole for college football. Jed Fish, talked about him a little earlier. He arrives via Arizona. He's going to rebuild. He's going to pair with quarterback Will Rogers, who, for those of you who watched over the past few years, he chucked it around the yard quite a bit at Mississippi State. Will the offense average 36 points per game in the Big Ten and without all their weapons? Absolutely not. It's just not going to happen. Honestly, they'll be lucky to clear 30 on a regular basis in this league. The defense, it's going to look about 90% different this season, so who really knows? But again, just like Michigan, going from the Natty to a 6.5 win total, that's brutal. Tier 3, we're grouping Wisconsin, Maryland, Rutgers, and Indiana. My Badgers really can't be 7-6 again, man. With their schedule, it's going to be tough to beat the mid-allegations this season. We get Tyler Van Dyke coming in at quarterback. Apparently, we're just transfer you for these quarterbacks that are good, not great. We'll see how he does this year. Trez Malusi is back. Broke his leg last year. He'll be a decent running back for us. The defense, they will indeed be nasty. But I've been told we're not super deep, so that's tough. Secondary is very good. Might be a long year in Madison. I'll ride the over 6.5 wins because I'm a sucker. Maryland begins life without Tagovailoa, and it's looking a little bleak. They need to replace 4 guys up front, multiple skill positions. Tough to handicap them early on. On defense, they do have some talent coming back, so we'll see. They need to retool their secondary. 6.5 total for even money. Let's talk Rutgers. Greg Schiano, they can check winning season off his checklist. They were 7-6 last year. Offense, they're going to be anchored by Kyle Monagai, who rushed for over 1,200 yards. He could be a Doak Walker conversational guy. He was great for the Knights last year. I wanted to say the quarterback from Minnesota. I'm going to give the name. People love it when I try the names. Afin Kaliakamanis. Actually, I think I got that. He's playing quarterback. For those of us that are Big Ten fans, we know that name. He comes over from Minnesota. They need to improve on a really bad passing attack. The defense, multiple All Big Ten selections. I think they have one at every single level. Should finish top 5. Their total 6.5. Seems pretty achievable. They avoid Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan on their schedule. The last team that I want to touch on here is Indiana, the Hoosiers. One of the most interesting teams. I talked about it. They are littered with James Madison guys, 12 players, 13 coaches. That paired with Curtis Rourke, great reason to be optimistic if you're an IU fan. Their 5.5 win total leans to the over. Hard to say what all these guys are going to look like in the Big Ten. So Minnesota, UCLA, Illinois, 5.5 win totals that lean significantly under. Illinois, their once great defense completely collapsed last year. the boat continues to sink in Minnesota. I only say this because one of those two is going to beat Wisconsin this year. I guarantee it. And I'll be big sad. UCLA just not in a good situation with Chip Kelly jumping ship and also losing their defensive coordinator. And then the very end of the conference, you get Purdue and Northwestern bringing up the rear 4.5 win totals. Going to be really cool. Northwestern playing their games on the lake this year at their practice facility. It's going to be a really cool place to see a game. Unfortunately, tickets are like $500 if you want to go. I already tried to look to see if the Badger Northwestern tickets were available. But honestly, that's it. Joey's out of here. We'll get back next week. I'll figure out a day that works for both of us. We'll talk some NFL. Appreciate everybody for coming in. 20 people watching. Love that. Good stuff. Make sure you follow on X, on Twitch, on YouTube, a little bit of everything. But appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next week.